In this episode, we talk about the incomparable John Prine. My gateway song might have been Sam Stone. And if there's a sad song scale from 1 to 10, Sam Stone is an 11. I don't know why I'm always attracted to sad songs, and it's almost like the way that I like hot wings. I like to be blown away. I like to stir in extra wasabi when I'm eating sushi. I like to feel it in my nose, and I think that's kind of how I feel about music. And when I was a kid, it was probably faster, heavier. That was the angle. And then as I got older, I want songs that give me a punch in the gut. I would say, to calibrate that scale, you have Dylan's capable of a sad song. Bruce Springsteen's capable of a sad song. U2, Running to Stand Still. To me, that one is, there's moments in there that are dinging the roof. REM, those are all ones that I think that fluctuate and maybe at moments really hit. Steve Earle, Townes Van Zandt, Tom Waits. He's kind of like always 5 or higher. And again, John Prine, he has some incredible songs, and he also has extremely light moments, and even some of the same songs. There's levity, there's jokes in there. The song that I thought I was going to come to first, which I definitely will arrive at soon, is Illegal Smile, and that's one too. That within that song, it is unbelievably sad, but there's also kind of light moments where he talks about a bowl of oatmeal that tried to stare him down and won. So some of the collaborations he's done too, and even some of the later music in his career, it's very, very humorous. And he's capable of the entire spectrum. He had only been a gigging musician for 8 months before he got his first record deal. Quick origin story for him, he grew up in Illinois, and so his city that he, was drawn to was Chicago. And right around the same time, he was playing a club across the street from a young, struggling Bill Murray when he was a stand-up comic. And so there are some interesting stories and interviews I've heard, both sides of, and I've heard them when they're hanging out together. I'll link that in the description. He had been in a little bit of a scene, and he had some people that he was close to, and one of the people was fortunate enough to be opening up for Chris Christopherson, who at that time, I guess back in the early 70s, was tremendous and just multi-dimensional talent, where he's acting and he's writing songs and he's performing. He said to Chris Christopherson, if you think I'm something, if you like this sound, you need to come see my friend John, because he's the real deal, he's the source. And in doing so, instantly from that point on, Chris Christopherson became an engine that was helping John Prine's career kickstart. Stick around. At the end, we'll go through the basic chord shapes. I have this set up for later live versions. The John Prine used to put the capo here on the 2nd fret. The actual album version is up a little bit higher, probably early in his career when his vocal range was different. And if you're looking for the precise, finger picking patterns, I'm going to put a link to an awesome channel, which is Mike's Music Method. If you want to, does a really nice, thorough job of showing how all the picking changes from chord to chord. I'm basically just including the chords and these little lines that kind of follow through. I'm going to kick it over to a special guest. Mr. Matt McMullan will be commenting and giving some of his views and context for this song. Thanks again for tuning in to 6 String Philosophy. Welcome.
How
Hello in there.
Hello.
Hello in there.
Hello in there.
All right, so you chose this tune.
Yeah, I begged you to pick this tune once I heard about the whole Rust Belt isolation thing, and this one is a cornerstone piece. And I wasn't even certain when I said the name of the song how many other people knew it when we started to talk about it. Because the first time I heard about it was in 87,
oh,
88.
Wow.
And it was a cover, and I think I mentioned to you at the time, it was Billy Bragg playing the guitar with Michael Stipe from REM and Natalie Merchant. And I was like, holy cow. Watching the whole video and waiting for Billy Bragg to talk or sing or do something, and he didn't. But I loved it. Then I went back and found out that this was a song by John Prine, and he made it way back in 71. Seemingly 2 people talking to each other who are older, whose children have grown up. One kid has been lost in a war, and then the chorus kicks in and hits you with that shot. And like I was telling you at one point when talking with family about this song, my older son actually didn't say this song sucks. You know what I mean? So I feel like it hit him in the same way because it talks about families growing up, growing older, and people starting new lives and stuff. And I was like,
You can't just half pay attention. I think,
no.
especially whenever Prine is singing,
No.
it's not background music.
it's structured, and if you look at the lyrics and you print it up, it looks like a 20-line poem. It looks like a 20-line poem, and it sort of presents itself almost like a sonnet. Not in terms of the structure, because the sonnet's 14 lines, but in terms of content and narrative. You know, sonnets classically introduce a problem. Well, this one doesn't slip in until about line 6. And then by the end of the poem, the poet, the speaker, John Prine, he's directing you to don't walk by and stare. He's directing you to say hello in there.
So I know that you are a gregarious individual, you know, and I imagine probably you in your world walking around, you talk to people when you get a chance.
Oh, too much.
I've been accused of that myself.
Too much. Too
Grocery
much.
line, you know, waiting to sit in a restaurant or something, right?
It's the curse of people who are, I guess, our age. Well, I'm going to be 58. How old are you?
47.
Okay, so I got 10 years on you.
Okay.
But last weekend we had a little interesting event where we decided to go down to the Tenement Museum on Lower East Side, and you're standing there, and I know all of this stuff from parents and uncles and stuff like that. Standing there, finally, the tour guide said, if anybody has any history of their own to bring into play, do it. And then I just got the dirty look from every member of my family. I got the dirty look. But then at the end, I didn't get yelled at. It was
okay.
Good. Well, the Lower East Side was a whole bunch of tenements. It seems to me to be beyond gentrified now. My mom's tenement building was at 140 Suffolk Street, so it's not there anymore. But it was a place when I grew up that you would go to buy clothing and stuff like that. And there were a lot of old people down there. But I actually got claustrophobic in these spaces because they're so small and ridiculously tight. I don't know how anybody would be able to say hello in there other than if it's hot in the summer and they're sitting on the stoop, you know? Prine grew up in Chicago, and it might not have been the inner city, but he had worked at the post office. Before that, he delivered newspapers. He has an anecdote where he had to work with a friend to deliver papers and mail packages to an old age home, and they had to be hand delivered because these people couldn't bend up, they couldn't walk, and one of the things that he points out is that sometimes he took on the role of a child to one of these people or a nephew. Wow. So that he was accustomed to talking to people regularly. And I find that interesting. And whenever I have the opportunity where you bump into somebody in a line, like you say, at the supermarket or the post office,
right,
you talk to them.
I always feel like the folks with the service hat.
Oh.
Like, and I can think recently we were somewhere, you know, like a DMV. I wish I could get past sentence number 1, because a lot of times I'll just say, thank you so much for your service. And like, I give it bookends where I'm like, you know, handshake, and then it's, I don't ask a question really, but you wonder, like, obviously that's kind of a marker that people are willing to talk about or to be recognized.
Yeah, but it's nice to see that there are those people still around that, and you could simply pay back by saying hello and giving them the time to air out their thoughts and stuff.
Any particular lines that really get you where, you know, when you hear it, it bites?
If you didn't hear it in years or you're new to it, is he saying, but he's setting you up. He's like, old trees grow stronger, old river grow wilder, but old people just grow more lonesome. It's like, oof, that one gets you.
Yeah.
And then out of that first chorus, back to the narrative and the names. I was doing a little bit of research on the names. Loretta was somebody who lived in his neighborhood.
Okay, didn't know that.
And Rudy is a name that just echoes in his head because one of the neighbor's dogs was named Rudy, and it would always get out.
That's amazing.
So,
how old was he when he wrote this? Do we know exactly? I mean, roughly?
23. He's
okay.
Between 20 and 23.
So, he's reminiscing very convincingly as if he worked in a factory in his youth. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, like you said, I mean, he had worked as a postman, he'd done some other jobs.
But he was probably surrounded by people in the neighborhood who worked in factories.
People's stories who surround him.
I bet he was a terrific listener. He wrote songs since he was 14 years old.
He said a funny thing where he said nobody spoke to him. And so he would go door to door, and he was like basically invisible. And then the one person that spoke to him once said, "When's the regular guy coming back?" And he's like, I am your regular guy. I've been coming to you for 2.5 years.
So he was nondescript until he was the script. And I'm sure he wrote so many different songs about the people he bumped into. This is just one of the classics.
For sure.
Again, just to go back to the whole poem aspect, presentment of a problem, a narrative of self, and then the solution is him not wagging his finger at you, but it says, if you're walking down the street sometime and spot some hollow ancient eyes, and he says, please don't just pass them by and stare as if you didn't care. Hello in there, hello. And I wonder if the second hello there is like hello to somebody who might be old, or just a hello to you, and he wants you to sort of reciprocate that.
Like he's role modeling that or something? Or,
oh yeah, absolutely. I think it's good that programs like this that you put together put a spotlight on some of these particular singer-songwriters and connect to a theme that's close to everybody's heart, whether it be getting older and becoming isolated and checking in on each other. You know?
Well, I appreciate you nominating the song. Yeah. We should probably, in his honor...
we did some deep research into what John Prine's favorite alcoholic drink was, and apparently it was his own homemade, invented Johnny Handsome.
Johnny Handsome, you familiar with the movie Mickey Rourke film?
Oh, really? No.
He gets plastic surgery to make himself look different.
Well, we don't need that. We look different as it is.
Who wants to look different than this?
But Johnny Handsome, he actually drank diet ginger ale.
I can't do anything diet, man.
No, we're too thin. We don't need that.
Trying to bulk, so.
No, we're good like that.
Good.
So,
excellent.
Pour a little of that in there. And from what I understand, I gave up this kind of stuff for Lent, but as far as I'm concerned right now, Lent
is
over.
Sunday where you do get a what's the word, dispensation on Sundays, at least in my house growing up. I don't know. Now we're going to dispense with this. Cheers. Here's to John Prine.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for the great music.
We'd probably use like 5 or 10 minutes of this, if at all.
Listen, I'm sorry, Matt. I had other visions.
Let's start all over.